you. Joining us now to respond is the man himself, Art Laffer, Laffer Art, whatever, of Laffer Associates. Art, I'm going to, you know what, I'm going to start in a little bit different way and just challenge you on all the notions that we've had for, 300 years, but I still want to challenge you on this. What's the problem with moving some of the wealth that rich people have that they don't use for anything productive, let's say, and just solving a lot of the problems that we have here? Is it, A, that goes against property rights and Western culture in terms of being confiscatory, or do you really believe that people will be less productive and work less if they know they're going to get taxed at a higher rate? What's the problem?
Well, I don't know if they'll work less. And I'm not worried about the justice idea here or the legal system.
Then why don't we do it? We got problems, Art. We got huge deficits. We've got people that need education.
Well, yes.
We've got a lot of these guys don't need billions of dollars. Let's go.
We've done it before. We did it in the 1920s. We lowered the tax rates from 73% in 1920 to 25% in 1929, and tax revenues from the rich went from about 30% of total tax revenues to 66%. Huge increase in tax revenues from the top 1%. The same thing happened under John F. Kennedy when we cut the highest tax rate from 91% to 70%. Revenues from the rich went way, way up. And the same thing had happened with Reagan when we cut the highest rate from 70% to 28%. Revenues from the rich went way, way up as a result of that. So, when you just look at the very simple, straightforward evidence, in fact, if you substitute complex error for simple truth, whenever we've lowered the rates on the rich and tax rates on the rich, revenues have gone way up. These people can get around your taxes, Joe, and they really can. Warren Buffett, as he reported in the New York Times, which is a rarity, reported his income taxes. He paid $7 million in taxes in 2010, and his income, according to economists, was about $12 billion. Now, if you cut those regulations, restrictions, and rates, he'll pay his fair share. But he's just using the tax codes to take advantage of them, as they all do, and they always will. They aren't going to sit there and pay these exorbitant rates to Zuckman and to Saez and to Piketty and to Mirrlees and to Slemrod. Yeah, of course they're going to find a way around it. They'll do inversions. They do all sorts of things. Why don't we just have a low-rate, broad-based, flat tax? Everyone pays the same rate, and then use the income distribution of the spending to help the poor and the minorities, the disenfranchised, who we all want to help. That's not an issue.
How about 1%?
The question is, how do you do it?
Yeah. How about 1%ers that we talk about? What is that, 550, 600,000 a year or so, Robert?
It's about 500.
Probably in that range.
So they don't take advantage of a lot of loopholes. A lot of people, as we had Lee Cooper work 6 months of the year for the government, and then whatever they make for the next 6 months sort of accrues to them.
I lost him.
Is that a good number? Is 50% a good number? Or I think he lost it.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. Yes, no one's talking about the 1%. What her taxes, remember, is those over 50 million.
But raising marginal rates, why is there a problem with going above where marginal rates? Would that be where you'd really get some revenue, because it would affect everyone, right? Does it hurt?
That and changes in capital gains, which is where a lot of the Democrats, other than Warren Sanders, are going to just look. Let's just put capital gains where ordinary income. Let's tax labor the same as capital. And that would generate, some say, even more revenue.
So you wouldn't go up in margin.
But if you look at all this, and what people don't talk about is cost of living, right? If you live in New York or California versus you live in Florida. So why doesn't anyone actually talk about, like you said, if you're in the 1% and you're in the half a million to 2 million?
It does differ. It does differ. But Warren escapes that entire argument because it's 50 million or more. I have a quick question for Art. I have a quick question for Art. Mike Novogratz recently, I think this week, said, the idea that these people making 50 million or more, or the billionaires that are subject to this tax, are afraid. He said, you're not victims. You're the richest people in the world. Can't these people that are worth 50 million or more afford 2 cents of every dollar beyond $50 million? Given the amount that would raise, can't they afford it? And isn't there too much fear about it?
Yeah, but you're not going to get it from them voluntarily unless you lower rates and they think the tax codes are fair. People don't like to be ripped off, and these rich people have earned the money, and you want to just tax them on the highest amounts, and they don't want you to.
That assumes no enforcement.
They don't.
That assumes you're just assuming no enforcement.
Oh, You don't think you enforce it? They can hire better lawyers and accountants and ex-IRS agents than you can.
All right, let me ask you a different question.
Rich.
Forget about a wealth tax for a second. Forget about necessarily higher marginal rates. How would you feel about just the basic closing of loopholes around step-up basis when it comes to end of life, 1031 exchanges for the real estate folks, carried interest for the private equity folks? I mean, let's do the low-hanging fruit. You game for that? Because I think historically you have not been.
Of course I'm with it. Andrew, I've always been for that.
Okay.
I've always been for getting all your deductions, exemptions. I did Jerry Brown's flat tax, where we lowered the rate to 13%, getting rid of all exemptions, deductions, et cetera, including individual deductions, all of that on the first dollar to the last dollar, and just let it go. They'll all comply with the tax codes because they believe they're fair. And they won't try to get around it. Now, of course, some of them will, Andrew, but not all of them. That's what you want to do with your taxes. Warren Buffett, as I said, in 2010, paid $7 million in taxes and earned $12 billion. I mean, and it's all fair. I mean, he's a genius. He does it.
Before we go,
that's what we want to do, not use police.
Before we go, the Laffer rate. What do you think is the highest level that you could tax the wealthy before there's too much avoidance and too little productivity? What is the highest rate?
I think if you did the highest rate we could possibly do it right now, I don't know what it would be, but I'll tell you it'd be 13% if you got rid of all the deductions, exemptions, exclusions, just like Jerry Brown did. That would be the perfect rate to do.
You only want to
talk
about how low you can go. You just want to talk about how high you can go.
Okay.
I want to get the growth up. I want to help the poor by jobs, not by trying to confiscate money from the rich.